and the licensing model with you. Katie Lloyd-Wilkinson, International, Eleni Rogers, Utilities Pre-Sales Lead, and Sarah St. Ruth, Product Manager, will both be giving product demonstrations. Then I will share the pricing and the licensing model with you. So to get started, I'll hand over to Matt.
Hello everyone and welcome. First, I'd like to take a minute to thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Matt Piper and I'm the Global Industry Director for Utilities, Water and AEC at Esri. I thought I'd take just a few minutes to talk about the utility network today before I hand it over to my colleagues from Esri UK to introduce the utility network editor in some more detail and of course provide us with some great demonstrations, which I know I'm looking forward to. As many of you know, utilities are facing new challenges, and while the existing systems, they may have served them well for the last 15 or 20 years, the current operating systems and information models will not meet the demands of the future grid. And as a result, many utilities are looking for new solutions. Many utilities are looking to modernize their IT systems to manage and adapt to this future grid. And we're seeing a trend in the acceleration and adoption of transformational projects or programs of work for modern EAM, ADMS, and more recently, their GIS technologies. And one of the most transformational technologies to be released in recent years is the ArcGIS Utility Network. This is the next generation modern asset management solution, which is purposely built to take utilities forward on their digital transformation journeys. There are three main components. It has the most advanced network modeling on the market. This information model is robust and it's highly configurable. It also has world-class capabilities in managing things like structure and domain networks. It allows you to model the details all the way down to the terminals. It works across network tiers and it allows you to manage subnetworks or circuits or pressure zones. And finally, it provides the model and characteristics to manage all the different asset types and the groups that exist in a modern complex network. The second point is it has world-class integrated visualizations and analytics. So out of the box, the utility network is 3D enabled, which allows organizations to bring to life their network, creating interactive digital twin models of their network and assets. Using attribute rules and arcade expressions, it is also possible to aggregate and report dynamically based on event conditions, providing accurate and timely reporting for both current, historic, and future states. And finally, it has a modern services-based architecture and security, which allows you to control access and apply business rules to ensure your data integrity is maintained in a secure manner. With that architecture comes several inherent benefits, including greater scalability and performance, enabling more robust integrations with other systems, and supporting both on-premise and cloud computing infrastructures. These are all essential characteristics necessary to support the information technology needs of a modern utility. Information security, as you know, is a very important topic these days, and ArcGIS provides your system administrators with a comprehensive set of fine-grained information security controls. These controls govern and control access to your geospatial data and system capabilities, giving complete control over which individuals may view and which data, if any, they can edit, which ensures your asset and network data are secure inside of ArcGIS. Now, as I briefly have discussed, there are many advantages in moving to the utility network, but primarily it is a comprehensive and extensible platform for managing the digital twin of your assets and network. It manages your entire network from generation to the meter, or from collection to consumption. And it also works across domains, allowing a single data model to be used to monitor and manage both your electric and gas networks, your telecom, your water, and your district and heating networks. Now together, all these components form the foundation of a modern GIS that stores information, uncovers business intelligence, and it communicates role-based information to all the stakeholders. This is both internal and external. Now, it's important to understand that the utility network is foundational to managing the modern network. And by implementing the UN, it unlocks so many other capabilities in the ArcGIS platform that your organization may not be taking advantage of. Things like 3D capabilities, digital twin for your networks and your building information models, managing imagery and allowing data capture, and of course, the automation that comes from things like AI and machine learning. It solves the business challenges of today, and it meets the demands of the future by interconnecting systems, creating relationships, and most importantly, it streamlines workflows. And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I'm going to hand it over now to Charles, who will be covering how you can extend your utility network and further streamline your workflows and enhance the capabilities with Esri UK's latest official product, the Utility Network Editor. Over to you, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and hello, everyone. My name is Charles Connelly, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Esri UK. And I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking about the Utility Network Editor and just give you an overview of the application itself and some of the thinking that went into its design and build. So first thing to notice, it is a web-based application. It's running here inside a Chrome browser, but it will work within any modern browser. I'm just going to make it full screen for the purposes of demo. But why did we write a web app? It's so that we could reach as wide an audience as possible. The utility network, as we've just seen, is an incredibly powerful services-based technology. And because it's services-based, a web-enabled client can connect to it, ask questions of it, display data, and perform editing. So we've written an application to focus on that editing task. And the reason we did it is many of our customers are struggling to keep their asset data up to date. The process of capturing change in the field, putting it into system, validating it, and getting back out to the end users can often be too onerous or too slow, and they've developed a backlog in that process, and therefore their asset register does not actually reflect the system as it is today. So we felt that if we give people an easy-to-use system that was widely available in a browser, that was very targeted at the task of editing data, and that used the rules of the utility network to ensure validity of data at the point of capture, then we could really help with that process. And that's what you see here. So I'm just going to show a few little simple examples. We'll go into more detail following this with some more concrete demos, but let me just show you a few things that highlight how we tried to approach this problem. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say create, I'm going to choose, and I've already typed in here, let's do that. That's a full list of all the things that are available to create in the utility network. I'm going to create a water main. So I'm going to create a distribution main. And the first thing to notice is all this yellow highlighting. These are the valid connection points for that mains. So if I create it and I connect to something that isn't one of those points, I'm making an error in the network, and we tell the user as they go. So let's just I'm just going to sketch a few things for illustration here. So I'm sketching a little line, and you can see if I do something like create a self-intersection, it doesn't tell me you've done something wrong. It doesn't allow me to do it and then say later on you need to validate this. It simply nudges me to say maybe that's not what you want to do. If I press and hold down the mouse, or if I'm using a finger on an iPad or tablet, you can see I get a zoom in, so I can be more precise without going into having to zoom in before I edit. So I've made that line there. I'm just going to finish it with a double click, and then I'm going to create another one. So it's submitting that change. I can go again, make another feature, and I can go again, and I can make another feature again, and off I go creating data. Now, because it's easy to create data and the rules are validated all the time, we also wanted to make it easy for users to try things out, and if they weren't happy, to easily go back. So here's the undo process, and just removes the feature all the way back. And here's the redo feature. And this will go right back to the start of your editing session so that users can try things out and have confidence in that process. That's an example of some of the thinking that went into it. I'll leave those up for the moment, but let me show you a few other examples of how we use the editor and the utility network together. So I'm going to make a selection of some features, and you can see those things selected. And over here, I can see I've got 34 things selected, and it breaks them down into categories. So water device and so on. Let's pick a controllable valve like that. So I have that selected, you can see on screen. And now I'm interested in its properties, and I can see properties just like normal, and I can change those. But the more interesting view is the network, which tells me what is that feature connected to. So I can see this controllable valve is connected to a service, and as I move over it, you see it highlighting. and another service here, and you see it highlighting on the screen. So on the left, I have the detailed connected view, and on the right, I have the mapping view. And these two worlds are tied together. Now, if I go here and say, let's look at this one, let's look at this one, and I want to expand it, and I can see what it connects to. So I'm essentially doing a very slow trace to build my understanding of that network. And I can use the rules of the data to tell me how things are working. So let's see, I'm interested in this one, and I'm going to select it. Now I want to add to that. So I can see what it's connected to, and I want to add a new connection to it. Now up here, we have got network rules. So we've queried the utility network, and we're using that to tell us that asset that you have of that type. Here are the things that can connect to it. So I go into those and I say, okay, I'm going to add a supply to it. And that is the next thing that I create. And that's a little snapshot of the type of approach we're trying to take. The theory being, if we can give people a user interface that's clean and easy to use, if we can target it on the process of just editing, capturing, and querying that data, then that should enable them to capture data with more confidence, to apply rules as soon as they create those edits, so that their asset inventory becomes a live record of what they have in the system. It removes that barrier between seeing change in the field and having that change recorded in the system, which opens up so many possibilities. And now we'll move in and just show a few more examples of this in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charles. Hi, everyone. I'm Eleni, and I'm the Technical Pre-Sales Lead for the Utility and Telecom sector at Ezra UK. I'm going to demonstrate to you today how a water utility could use Utility Network Editor to perform edits on their network, maintain data quality, and use sophisticated tracing analysis, all in an accessible web-based application. Here's an example of 3 users that we would typically see in a water utility. I'm going to consider what each of these users need from Utility Network Editor to carry out their daily tasks. Let's start with the mapper first. A mapper in a water utility is traditionally someone who may need to make quick edits to the network, especially in a quality assurance or quality control workflow. They're responsible for maintaining high quality data for the network, which then underpins a water utility's ability to trust in their network data and use it reliably for reporting, analysis, or in the event of an unplanned incident. The mappers are really the starting point for ensuring the network can be made instantly available for analysis by other users. Let's take a look at how this user would make use of the smart network connectivity rules built into the Utility Network Editor. In this example, the mapper needs to update the water network by extending a water main into a new residential area. To find the starting asset I'm interested in, I can use the find function to search for the asset's ID. I've done this once before, so I can use my history to quickly locate the asset. As part of my task, I need to complete the edits on this water main to ensure it's connected to the rest of the network. And for the new residential area, I need to extend the water main along Sigmund Road so that new customer connections can be made. The first thing I need is a T at the end of this water main. To do this, I can simply select the water main and then go to my network tools that give me instant access to the rules for my network, which actually guide me on what assets can be connected to each other. This ensures that as an editor, I have confidence that I'm getting the edits right first time, but also complying with my business rules for the network. You might notice that as I start to edit that T, the main is highlighted for me on the map, indicating it's a valid asset to connect to. I've also automatically snapped the T onto the end of the water main. Utility Network Editor is connecting those assets together for me, ensuring that my organization can accurately model the direction of flow of water around my network. I now need to search for valid assets that can connect to the T fitting, and to extend down Sigmund Road, this is going to be a distribution main. I can follow the same editing techniques as before. This time the T is highlighted as the valid connecting asset. And then to finish my editing task here and ensure that the network can then be used for accurate analysis by other users, I need an end cap to ensure that the water main here is fully edited. I can again use the snapping functionality here to ensure that network connectivity. The Utility Network Editor applies this smart editing instantly, and a great way to demonstrate the connectivity that's already been applied to the network, ensuring that flow can be modeled, is by using the Network Reshape tool. Here, if I've noticed I've made a mistake, I can simply change the location of that end cap, and then all the other assets, including the water main, remain connected. Now let's consider how an engineer would use the Utility Network Editor. For this user, the editing that was just performed by the mapper is really important for them to be able to quickly locate assets that need inspecting or maintaining and to be able to perform accurate tracing analysis. The engineer can access the latest view of the water utilities network data out in the field on a tablet device, and if there's a leak or an incident, understand how to isolate and protect the network. Let's take a look at some of those workflows. In this example, the engineer needs to locate a water meter inside a meter station that supplies a block of flats. Traditionally, this meter station asset would be displayed as a single point on a map, but with the Utility Network Editor, the engineer is actually able to turn on containment to see inside the meter station and find the asset that they need to inspect or maintain. As the engineer, I need to inspect this water meter asset, but I also need to know how this meter is connected to the rest of my network so I can carry out a full assessment. By selecting the meter, I can use my network tools to view the connecting assets in a graph view. And then by expanding each asset's connection, I can follow the same path of how the water would flow coming from the distribution main. As I hover over assets in the graph view, these features are also highlighted for me on the map. This gives me full confidence that I understand how this part of the network operates, particularly if I'm new to the utility and don't have prior knowledge of the area. Now let's see Utility Network Editor in action. As the engineer, I've spotted a leak on a water main whilst out in the field, and I want to know which valves need to be switched off in order to isolate the leak. I've already created a starting point for the trace, having snapped it to the water main. I have many different configurations for the tracing analysis, but for this scenario, I'm going to use isolation. Once I've hit run, the controllable valves that need to be operated to isolate the leak are highlighted for me on the map, but I can also access a full list of the assets through a configurable report. This means I can act really quickly and let the rest of the utility know of the potential impact to the network. Now that the engineer has used Utility Network Editor to understand how to isolate a leak that's occurred on the network, let's consider how customer services can then identify the impact to customers. The customer services team must be able to collaborate with engineers on the ground to understand the impact of that leak to the water utilities customers who now may be temporarily off supply whilst the issue is resolved. As a member of the team, I can use Utility Network Editor to generate a quick report and find out which of my customers need to be contacted in order to maintain a good level of customer service. As a customer services manager, I've already received the location of the leak from the engineer out in the field, as shown in my map. In order to assess the impact on customers whilst the engineer isolates that leak, I can again use the sophisticated tracing analysis tools. I'm going to choose Customer Isolation as the trace type, which has been specially configured for my team. Once I hit run, Utility Network Editor performs the tracing analysis to understand which customers are connected to this section of the network. The customer connections are highlighted for me on the map, but again, I can also access them in a trace report, which returns this time a list of customers who have been impacted. This report could include customer account details and whether they're priority service customers. In order to contact those impacted customers quickly, I can use Utility Network Editor to export the list of customers to a CSV file, or even export it to an external system such as a CRM. Hopefully you've seen in that short demo that Utility Network Editor provides really sophisticated and very powerful editing techniques that are made instantly available to the whole organization. Because Utility Network Editor is accessible on the web, your users can benefit from highly performant maps that allow them to focus on the real tasks at hand. This becomes critical in the event of an incident on the network or planned outages due to maintenance tasks. The water utility is able to access the latest network information and run an analysis to make quicker and more informed decisions. I'll now hand over to Sarah, who has some exciting things to share on the future development plans for Utility Network Editor.
Thanks, Eleni. Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to say that our first release of the Utility Network Editor is now available through the ArcGIS Marketplace. It came after a 6-month-long beta where we worked with a variety of utility network specialty partners. During this time, we got some fantastic feedback, which we've been able to action into new capabilities. So today, I'm going to take you through some of these new key enhancements. I'm then going to showcase our builder and how easy it is to get started creating and tailoring Utility Network Editor apps. And to finish, I'll be giving you a sneak peek at what we're currently working on for our next release. So let's first talk about branch versioning. In this release, we have several channels to support branch versioning. Here on my screen, I've got open the Utility Network Editor and it's configured against an electric distribution network. I'm going to start by opening the versioning panel. Here you can see I'm on the default version and I have a few options available. I can choose an existing version or I can create a new one. I'm going to create a new one so you can see the workflow. Okay, so I'm now on the new version, and after I'm finished making edits, I can post these. However, we were aware when we were developing this capability that organisations may want to have fine-grained control over their own versioning strategy. Here in the builder, you can see that I can enable the behaviour that I want the end user to have. I can even choose how to handle check-ins and where the panel appears in the app. So let's head back into the app. We've added several what we would call quality of life enhancements, and many of these were suggestions from our beta partners. So one of these was the ability to remember the previous map extent from the last closed session, and also in the same session be able to navigate extents. We are keen, where possible, to offer quality of life enhancements. This leads us nicely on to the design principle that we as a product team are very passionate about, and that is making the editing experience as intuitive as possible. One way we can do this is by automating feature creation. This is the same concept you may have seen in ArcGIS Pro with group template functionality. So in this example, I'm adding a new aerial wire in a telecoms network. I have a few rules. One is that a wire must be separate between each vertice. And where two wires meet, and at both the beginning and the end of a wire, a communication pole must exist. So now when I select my feature, You can see in the selection the individual sections, and also the communication poles have been automatically created for me. Even better, they're all connected to one another. What this means is we can automatically create features which are valid parts of our network without any further QA processes required. I want to take a minute or two to highlight how easy it is to build, tailor, and get started with Utility Network Editor. So here, I'm quickly running through the builder to create a new app. I've now got the default configuration for Utility Network Editor, and this is what we've been showcasing today. But what if an organisation wants to customise it further? Well, this can all be done from the builder. It could be something as easy as renaming the application, adding some charts, or customising trace reports. There is also the ability to extend the app further using Arcade, webhooks, and GP, meaning it can be fully integrated into your environment. So let's talk about the future roadmap for Utility Network Editor. We are committed to keeping up to date with the latest capabilities the Utility Network team are releasing. We have almost completed the work required to support viewing, creating, editing, and tracing non-spatials, which is imperative to a lot of telco workflows. And I'm really pleased to say that this will be available in the next release. We'll also be releasing support for attachments, giving you the ability to capture or upload images and documents against features. Now that's it from me today. I'm going to hand you over to Katie.
Thanks very much, Sarah. So now some information on licensing. As the Utility Network Editor is a client to the ArcGIS Utility Network, a base deployment is needed. These are the prerequisite ArcGIS components required. First of all, ArcGIS Enterprise, then user types that have got editing privileges, and ArcGIS Utility Network user type extensions. Once you've got this architecture in place, you can then deploy Utility Network Editor on top. The application is a named user subscription model. Each user is $500 per year. There are volume discounts available too once you get to 50 users and above. So if you'd like to know more, there's lots of information on our website. We're also offering one-to-one meetings to discuss your particular use case and workflows. We would recommend getting in contact with your Esri account manager as they may want to work hand in hand with us on this. We'd also like to point out that we're offering a 60-day trial. And for anyone that's got any questions or comments after the webinar, if you drop an email to sales@esriuk.com, we'll get back in contact with you. Now that concludes the webinar content for today. What we're going to do is move into the live Q&A and we're going to take a look at some of your questions. Over to you, Sarah.
Hello everyone. So I'm going to be leading today's Q&A. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen in a moment. Okay, it seems to not want to swap over. Okay, it seems not to want to swap over. So we'll just start with the Q&A for now. So we got some great questions in, so excited to go through some of these. So let's start with, if this is browser based, does it mean it can only be used while connected? Is there an offline ability with this? So I'll take that question. Right now it is using online, so you can take it out on a tablet. It runs in a browser, so feel free to take it out with an iPad or any tablet of your choice, and you'll be able to use it out in the field. We are absolutely committed to creating offline applications for this. We are just waiting for the capability to become available in the utility network. Okay. So in Charles's demonstration, it was mentioned that the app is validated as soon as the edit was performed. Does that mean does it validate topology request to the UN server, or is it simply an explicit check of the connectivity rules in the app? If it is the latter, when does it validate topology? So Charles, can I hand that one over to you?
Yeah, it's sort of a hybrid. So topology is maintained all the time in terms of making sure that the various vertices of shapes are cracked and clustered in the right way so that things intersect where they're meant to. So we handle topology live in the app. We handle connectivity in there as well. But we have you can validate the network. You can actually request utility network validation at any point, and then it will scan through and give you those results. And the reason we did it in that way was, while you're editing things, you might need to be in a your network might need to be invalid while you do some edits, and then you validate and check things. So it's a hybrid of on-the-fly support is probably the best way of doing it to make sure topology works properly, and then network validation using utility network.
Brilliant, thanks Charles. So features seem to be added one by one. Can Pro templates be made available to the end users in the browser application? Okay, so I'll take that one. Hopefully, as part of my session, you were able to see how we emulate that functionality. So we call these smart features. Smart features allow you to determine how features should connect to one another and automatically create dependent features. And so on and so forth. So we absolutely do have the capability to create those types of features. And what we're not doing right now is reading that from the network. It's not quite available just yet, but you are able to configure it within the builder that I demonstrated.
So just to add to that, we spent some time yesterday with the dev team going through the support. It's absolutely brilliant what you can do and the time savings around it. I got really excited seeing it. And as soon as we can, we'll read those things in from if you define them in Pro, we'll read them in and sort of hydrate them in the app. But you can do incredible stuff in this way, and it really jumps the productivity up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, okay. So are the associations filtered out on the map view until containment is entered? Is this configurable or a standardized set? Charles, do you want to take this?
It's configurable. You can decide what you want to see, and you can have those default. You can set them to the defaults you want as you sort of log in, but essentially you can choose to show them, you can choose not to, but you don't see them until they're created.
Great, thanks Charles. So does it support non-geographical features? Okay, so I'll take this one. Yeah, in the release that we've got right now, it does. So what we support is version 4. And what we mean by that is it doesn't quite support non-geographical features. I think it's part of my demonstration earlier. I showed that in the next release, which will be coming into beta, we do support it. So you'll be able to view, edit, and trace non-spatials. So it's not quite there in the general release product, but it will be available shortly in the beta release. With
just on that one, we work against utility network, and the version of that gets updated regularly and gets new capabilities, and then we add those in and add support for them. So the non-spatial support is very active. We can demo it to anybody who's interested in more detail around that. But once again, when it's fully supported, we will add it to the product. And the user interface for it's an interesting area, because trying to make this stuff easy to create while maintaining, they can be complex things by nature. So it's an interesting process trying to refine the UI to help the user as much as possible. But it's very much on its way, and it's good. Thank you.
No, thanks, Charles. That's great. Okay, so can you display schematics diagram side by side to a map? Charles, do you want to take that?
Yes. You can choose that there's we basically take the network that's on screen, and we can generate schematics for what's on screen. We can do a trace, and then we can generate a schematic for the trace, or you can make a selection and do it that way, or you can call a pre-configured schematic thing. So it's for want of a better phrase, full schematic support. And you can make that full screen or half the screen and see the two in sync with each other and cross-select between them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've got a question here. I've heard the tools are not yet available in ArcGIS Pro. Can we confirm? And is there a roadmap to add them into ArcGIS Pro? So I'll take this one, and then maybe Charles, you can elaborate. So Utility Network Editor is an application which has been designed to edit the utility network in a browser. And some of the stuff that we've done is specifically to help those editors be able to edit the network. So the answer is that we're using utility networks. There's lots of stuff that you can do in ArcGIS Pro, but we're really focused on that editor user. So there would be some capabilities which don't exist in ArcGIS Pro, but do exist in Utility Network Editor. Charles, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is focus on that editing experience and try and refine it as much as we can. And we essentially mine the utility network rule base that you configure, and we try and use that to help guide the user. And what we have, it's not a subset of what Pro has, and it's not a superset of it. It's a different sort of approach, but we learn hugely from what is done in Pro, and sometimes we try and transcribe that. And we've got very close relationship with Esri themselves, the mothership, and they learn stuff and it feeds back again. So it's a good virtuous relationship. But you can achieve in Pro, you can achieve everything we do with the Utility Network Editor. It's just maybe a different user interface or experience at some points.
Great, thanks, Charles. Okay, so what version are utility network editors editing? Can users change to a specific named branch version? Okay, so hopefully as part of my presentation, I showed you how much control you have to determine how your editors are editing versions. So yes, absolutely. If you wanted users to open a specific name branch version, you could do that, and you could hide the ability for them to change what version they're on. It is completely customizable, configurable for your organization, and that's all available through the builder, and works really nicely as well with other parts of the platform. So if you are using stuff like Workflow Manager, or you have your own systems whereby you wanted to launch UNE with a URL, you could do that because you can add them into the parameter. So lots of options there.
And if I could just expand slightly on that, we have full support for branch versioning and different ways of interacting with it. But I would ask you all to think about when you're using versioning and how you're using it, because today quite often we use versioning because that's how we work. But you don't necessarily need to use it in all ways. If you're able to validate all the time and you're able to control the rules against your data, then some of the reasons you used validation for in the past might not be there. So just consider that, because it can simplify things for the users. But we do support the full version workflows as well.
Great, thanks, Charles. So Eleni, I'm going to hand this next question to you. So can the trace export CSV be configured? And I guess the other question here is can trace reports be configured?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So absolutely, they can be configured in order to sort of pull the attributes that you might have on those features. You can choose what they are. So it might be priority service customers, or it might be some other source of information that you want in that report. And then as part of that export, that CSV is just looking at the trace configuration itself. So it will export anything that you've chosen to configure for that particular trace report. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to that, Sarah?
The only thing in addition to what I'd add is something that you demonstrated, which was the fact that, we have different applications. You could have different applications for different users. Those trace reports and exports can be tailored for those audiences as well. You don't need to just produce one for your organization. You could produce, really focused reports and exports.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Eleni. Okay, so if we have a custom unique ID, what happens to these if we undo and redo edits? So when we do an undo and redo, we basically store that undo and redo until the browser gets refreshed. So if you have that, you would be able to undo and redo and be able to get back that unique ID. But it's always worth a conversation to decide how that's generated and stuff like that. So it would definitely be worth having that conversation with your distributor, the partner that you're working with, or with us. Okay, where are the connectivity rules and feature templates built? Is there a UI for this? Charles, do you want to take this one?
So the rules are authored as part of the utility network itself, and when you're authoring one of these utility network editor apps, you basically point at a utility network service, and we connect to it, and we take the rules out and use that to configure and build the app. Then you can extend that, and you can add additional user interface rules and feedback rules and so on. The feature templates, there is a builder experience where you can user interface where you can go in and create and configure and tweak those as well. And eventually we want to be able to read those from, if they've been configured in the utility network, directly out as well. But yes, there's an interface for it. But as much as possible, we try and make use of the rules that you've configured as part of the utility network. It's really important that you've got a common rule base across the whole organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so question is so Eleni, I'm going to fire this one to you. Is the utility network editor only for water?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So in that demonstration that I showed, it was just a water utility example, but utility network and utility network editor works with both gas and electric domains, and in the future with non-spatial support telco networks as well.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Ellen.
And by extension, if people configure utility network to support other types of system, we support the utility network. There are some domains like telco which need support for some of the non-spatial stuff which we're working on, but fundamentally it edits a utility network, however you configure that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so do you need to modify the database of the vanilla utility network and add more fields for the editor? So I can take that one. No. As Charles has mentioned, we are just reading the utility network. There's nothing special that you need to build into your model to be able to use the utility network editor. Okay, so I've got one about water. So Eleni, I might fire this your way. But as the water flow direction is known, could utility network editor highlight all downstream affected customers due to a burst or defected pump?
Yeah, so in the demo example that I gave today, that was showing an isolation trace and showing how to protect a section of the network. But indeed, if it was something like a pump failure, which would then impact customers and assets downstream of that, you can use a downstream trace configuration. You might have spotted it in the list as I was going through the demonstration, but absolutely that is possible as well. It could also be upstream and a fully connected trace to understand potentially an impact to a DMA, for example.
And that's another example of all we're doing is taking what the utility network allows and surfacing it. So you can configure within reason any type of trace you want, and then we simply get a list of those traces and make them available to the users.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eleni. Thanks, Charles. So can one use a GPS tracked as an input or as a snappable backdrop for editing? Yes, the answer is yes. We do support GPS and we support also capturing points from GPS as well. So Katie, I'm going to fire this one to you. I know you've covered this already, but I think it's good as we're going through this to just kind of reiterate. What is the licensing and costs?
Sure, thanks, Sarah. So the licensing model is on a per user basis. So for every user that needs to edit using the utility network editor, there is a subscription user cost, and that is $500 per year.
Great, thanks, Katie. Okay, so Katie, there's another one for you. So this person is in the US and they want to know, is the Utility Network Editor available in the US?
Yes, the Utility Network Editor is available globally, and depending on whereabouts your organization is located, would depend on who could effectively support you with that. We've got many utility network specialty partners and distributors that are implementing or working with customers to help deploy the Utility Network Editor along with the migration to the utility network. So the quickest way to find out how we can support you or get you in contact is to get in touch with us here at Esri UK, and we'll join those dots.
Great, thanks, Katie. Okay, so is it possible to customize and configure the Utility Network Editor? For example, bringing capability such as create a new version automatically, so it doesn't have to be done by the user. So I'll take this one, absolutely. So as part of the presentation I showed earlier, I did a really quick demonstration of the builder. But that builder is extensible. You know, we can, there's loads of options to customize, whether or not it's customizing the workflow, so doing some automating like you've suggested around new versions. You know, you can add additional rules, like we said, probably say assess that, you know, should that be on the service rather than just in one particular app. You can configure the user interface to match the audience that you're talking to, which is really important. You know, potentially some people within the organization might not even need to edit the utility network they just want to run traces, you know, and that sort of level of configurability you can have within the builder. There is also additional capabilities around using webhooks. You can use GeoProcess and you can hook those into the application. So you can really embed a Utility Network Editor within business systems as well. Would anybody else like to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's a good example of it is that when you're doing editing in Utility Network, we actually create a version for that user, make all the edits in that version, and then push it in. So we're using that sort of customization ourselves to enable workflows. You can also customize apps for different groups of users, as Sarah said. So you might have some users who you don't want them capturing any spatial features, but you want them changing the attributes of what you already have. So updating, you know, switch positions and things like that. So there's a lot of scope for that.
Absolutely, completely tailor the editing experience. Does it exist with other languages? So I can take that one. We have machine translation for Utility Network Editor. We're absolutely open to having the conversations about support for languages and what languages it needs. It's primarily supported in English, but yes, we can manage machine translation.
I mean, it is fully internationalized. It's just the question is supporting those other languages. So if it was needed in other regions, we'd need to talk to the local distributor or partner about that support. But it is totally able to be customized into different languages.
Yeah. Okay, so does the editor support different user types and rights? Okay, so I can take that one, and then, you know, Charles, Katie, feel free to interject as well. The Utility Network Editor, the ArcGIS named user needs to have to be able to edit data is the minimal. It needs to be an editor named user type in the ArcGIS system. If somebody is going to be creating these applications or managing them, they need to have the privileges to be able to store content within the ArcGIS system. So, you know, either a creator or GIS professional. So it's really what is that user and what are they going to be doing with that? So, you know, if they're going to be going out into the field, editing the data, they might need field worker. You know, if they're going to be editing in Office, you might use editor. So it's really what is that user doing? But the minimum to use the application right now to edit data is an editor named user. Okay. So can we search by coordinates? So this is a great question. Actually, search is really configurable. So we can search, you could set up your own locators if you've got them within your organization. You can search by coordinates, you can search by asset IDs. All of that is configurable within the builder. And you can just set up searching by using the World Geocoding service as well. Okay. Okay, I'm just having a quick scan through these just to. Okay, a question, is this an Esri product or is it an Esri UK product? Katie, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. This is an Esri UK product. We've got a development team over here in the UK, and we work really closely with Esri in terms of roadmap and understanding how we could facilitate development that would enhance parts of the platform. So Utility Network Editor is specifically developed by Esri UK, but available to all customers globally via either ourselves or their local distributor or a local partner.
Great, thanks, Katie. Okay, sorry, we've had lots and lots of questions, so I'm just trying to find some of the ones that aren't duplicates.
So while you're doing just on that question, you know, it's an app that Esri UK have written, but it is just another app in the ArcGIS system. So you have Pro, you have field maps, you've got dashboards, and Utility Network Editor is one of those apps that we develop here in the UK. And the reason we do that is we really focus and specialize in sort of user workflows to make editing simpler. It's an area of expertise that we've built up over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Charles. Actually, I'm going to give you this next question. So how will this work with a telecom project? So, you know, as part of the demonstration, we showed water and electric, but, you know, how will it work with the management of assets such as embracing Esri's UN for telcos?
So that's the part we're actively working on right now. So a lot of this is driven by non-spatial support. Non-spatials being things like fibers running through a duct, so you don't digitize the fiber. Obviously, you just say there's 100 fibers in here. So we've got the support for that in the development version. It looks really good. It's very powerful. The discussion we're having very actively internally is how do you represent that in a way which doesn't confuse the user or make it too hard to access, because as you know, telcos in terms of connectivity is an order of magnitude more than other areas. So it's a very active area of support. And when we get it to beta, we'd really appreciate the feedback from yourselves to see how we can simplify things. But there's some really good stuff happening, and some of the user interface ideas I saw yesterday were once again just really exciting.
Thanks, Charles. Okay, so I'm going to take this one, but is it possible to integrate the editor with Survey 123 or Quick Capture? Like we mentioned before, you can use URL parameters and stuff like that, and you can launch that within the builder, and we've got loads of ways to configure that functionality. So yes, absolutely, you could use this application alongside other Esri applications. The major benefit that we've got here as well is that, you know, it's one service, it's one source of truth that can be accessed in lots of different apps. So yes, you can integrate to a degree, so you can launch from there, and also Utility Network can be launched from those apps, but you know, you can also view the same data in those applications.
Just to reinforce that point, the only thing that we're doing is reading data from the Utility Network and then writing it back in there. The only data store which persists is the Utility Network and all the data around it. So Survey 123 can connect and see that data. Field apps can connect and see that data. There's one source of truth in your organization. We're just giving you an app that helps the management and creation and validation of that data.
Great, thanks, Charles. I was going to ask another question, but it's actually really, really similar to what we've just answered. Okay. Okay, is there any tools available to create favorites, so favorite types of features? Yes, so you can enable this by default, and then you know, the ones you use the most will come up in a favorites panel. You can also, like Charles mentioned earlier, we do have a user interface within the builder to be able to configure feature templates. So if you had ones that were going to be a favorites and you wanted them to appear at the top, in terms of order, give them more precedence, you can absolutely do that as well. So you can really get that fine-grained control for a user.
It's based on, the user interface is based on a music app where you essentially you find your feature and you put a star against it to say you like it, and it turns up at the top if that's where you want it to be.
Yeah.
We took a lot
So
of
let's take a
different
little
types of
look
applications user
at
interface,
how the rules
such as
and
music apps.
connectivity in your
Absolutely.
network can be applied as you work with your data.
Okay, so can you elaborate a little more on the technical architecture? So this will probably be the last question, just looking at time. Does it install a web app on the same